So John Doyle claiming the media is ignoring white child murdered by black man. No, they're not. We're going to go look and see, media coverage of this. We're going to Google it to show that he's just being wrong. And secondly, he's going to try and equivocate this to like, oh, you care about cops murdering people, but you don't care about this murder. Okay, the reason people are protesting cop violence is because cops get away with violence, whereas this case, the guy was arrested the same day and charged. He's already been arrested and charged. There's no miscarriage of justice happening in that case. It's not about just a crime happening. It's about the miscarriage of justice. The Floyd murder, the Eric Chauvin, I think is his name, probably wouldn't have been arrested if it wasn't for the public outcry. And we still have cops getting away with the murder, like the lady who was in bed, and they broke into the wrong house, and they shot her in bed. And they're still walking the streets. They haven't been charged with anything. So that's what the Black Lives Matter, Derek Chauvin, did I say Eric? Yeah, and Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor was shot in her bed by the cops because they were doing a no-knock raid in plain clothes. And they got into the wrong house and shot her in bed. And then the boyfriend, thinking that someone was breaking into their house, shot at the police, and then he was charged with, like, attempted murder of a police officer. They ended up dropping the charges. But either way, all those cops are out and free and not charged with anything. So that's why the Black Lives Matter protests are happening, right? Because there's been a miscarriage of justice. Cops getting away with something, whereas this case, the guy who murdered the kid, and that guy's a fucking dirtbag. Anyone who murders anyone, much less a fucking child, deserves to go to prison, right? But he was charged the same day. That's not a miscarriage of justice. That's not what the protests are about. The protests aren't like, someone did a crime. It's, someone did crimes. Not only this crime, but systematic injustices for decades, and nothing's being done about it. So let's see him do the false equivalence, shall we?
Today is Thursday. This presumably would have been Canon Hinnant's fourth day of kindergarten. His first day was supposed to be on Monday, but Canon didn't get to experience his first day of kindergarten, and he won't get to experience...
Canon Hinnant.
There's nothing
Search.
funny about the tools of capitalism.
News. Thank you to Random Invite with 50 bits. Sometimes I wonder if John is just inept or playing stupid. Oh, he's playing stupid. He's a fascist. He's an absolute fascist. Speaking of which, I finally got paid from Twitch. So, we're going to start the behind the mask thing, as we've been talking about doing, where I'm going to go into these private, a lot of these, like, people like John Doyle, Liberty Hangout. If you pay them a subscription, you get into their private chat rooms. So, we're gonna, I think over the weekend, I'm gonna go in there and try and find what I can, and if there's enough content, we're gonna do a whole Chud Watch on that stuff, or at least make it a segment in Chud Watch for Monday. So, stay tuned for that. Monday we'll be looking at, I think, probably John Doyle's. I'll save Liberty Hangouts for another one. But I think we're going to be doing John Doyle's private groups. Thank you, RSTLPDX, for following. So, we'll check that out and see what we can find. Hannah paying for access to private right-wing Chud servers so we don't have to. Yeah, it's going to be bad. It's going to be real bad. It's going to be the closest thing to investigative journalism I'll ever do in my life.
There's nothing funny about
Random invite with 30 bits. I'm excited for the quality content. Well, it's coming from me. I don't know how quality it'll be, but I'll do my best. Anyway, so as you can see, there are just fucking countless articles about this awful murder of this kid, right? From ABC and CNN and Fox News and CBS and all kinds of local affiliates. Like, they're just pages upon pages. Here's up to 12 pages down. Let's see. School board. Nope, that one's not it. Let's go back a bit to see where we get the actual still murder articles. We have like 5 pages of articles about this kid getting killed, and it's tragic. I agree. But the fact that they're about to say, well, why don't you care about this? You can care about multiple things, John. Anyway, let's let John speak and see what he has to say.
Experience his first day of first grade, and he won't get to go shopping with his mother for school supplies and watch regretfully as every year his list becomes filled with less colored pencils and crayons and more notebooks and binders, because he actually won't get to do any of the things that we all enjoyed growing up, because he had his life stolen by this man Darius Sessoms, because he supposedly biked on the man's lawn by accident. And so Darius Sessoms approached 5-year-old Canon while he was playing outside with his sisters, and he executed him.
That's fucked up.
He shot this 5-year-old boy in the head point blank, and the media are silent.
They're literally not, John. We just fucking looked this shit up. Do I need to do it again? Control V. Oops, nope. That's not what I wanted. There we go. News. CNN. 25-year-old man has been charged in the shooting death of a 5-year-old, Canon Hinnant. And there's a video on it, too. Is it gonna load? Load.
They
There we
were
go.
just playing in the yard like any other day.
Canon had gone to church Sunday morning with his dad and sister.
Everybody there just loved Canon.
And Canon just loved riding his bike, as he was doing Sunday evening in his dad's front yard on Archer's Road, his 2 sisters there with him. His dad, Austin Hinnant, was inside when he heard the gunshot.
I just scooped him up in my arms and held him, and I screamed, and somebody help me please help me save my son. God, save my son, please.
Hinnant looked up and saw his neighbor in the yard next door, gun in hand, pacing
There's nothing
frantically.
funny about the tools
I
of
was looking at
capitalism.
him as I was picking up Canon, and I was so full of rage, but I couldn't leave my son's side. I just wanted to be with my son.
Hinnant's fiance called 911. He says his neighbor, 25-year-old Darius Sessoms, who lived with his parents, soon drove away. Police arrested Sessoms the next day, charging him with murder. Can you explain why he would shoot your 5-year-old boy?
I have no idea why he would kill my son in front of his 2 sisters.
No offense,
Just,
dudes spanking dudes, but your parents sound like fucking psychos.
Just the night before, Hinnant says he had Sessoms over for supper.
So you get it, right? This is news coverage from CNN talking about it. Police have charged a 25-year-old man with first-degree murder after they say he shot and killed a 5-year-old boy last week in Wilson, North Carolina. Austin Hinnant told CNN affiliate WRAL he was inside the home when his son Canon was playing outside and was shot. Hinnant says he ran outside and scooped up the injured child and held him in his arms. I screamed, somebody help me save my son, he said. Hinnant told the affiliate he looked up and saw his neighbor, Darius Sessoms, in the yard next door with a gun in his hand, pacing and frantic. Quote, I was looking at him and I was picking up Canon and I was so full of rage, but I could not leave my son's side, he said. I just wanted to be with my son. Hinnant's fiancé called 911, he said, and Sessions drove away. In a news release, the Wilson Police Department said officers were dispatched to the 5100 block of Archer's Road on August 9th in reference to a shooting found an 5-year-old suffering a gunshot wound who later died at a nearby hospital. Police identified Sessoms as a suspect and arrested him after he was found Monday in a Goldsboro residence about 30 minutes south of Wilson. It was unclear if Sessoms has an attorney. So not only is it in this article, this is from this, so clearly CNN broadcasted this on the network at some point. We also have, of course, a Fox News article about the same. We have a USA Today article about the same thing. We have, let's see, here's the WARL. It's the local affiliate station that they were talking about in the other article. We have WCNC Charlotte. We have, let's see, ABC 6 Action News. We have WNKY. We have People.com, I assume affiliated with People Magazine. We have KABC TV. We're going to go through all these just because I want to get the point home that he's saying that no one's covering this. Fox 39 News. WACB. ABC 7. The Wilson Times. CBS 17. The Wilson Times covering it yet again. Real Clear Politics. Talking about Steven Crowder talking about it. Fox 5 Las Vegas. WRAL again. ABC News 4. KY3. AZ Family, WKYT, WE whatever, WETM, Yak Tri News, WEAR, WTVC, Fox 28, 13 WMAZ. This is gonna be the most boring shit ever, but I got a fucking WCBM, Univision, whatever this is, Ahoro Mismo, Noticias Ya, which I think is a Spanish language news source, Marzel News, Wavy.com. Like, come on. There are tons of news sources talking about this, John. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, it's so weird that he thinks he can just come out and lie about this, and then people be like, oh, okay. Yeah, you said it, so it must be true. You fucking scum.
If you try to find this story online, you're only going to find it from like local sources, a few conservative publications maybe, but the mainstream media are dead silent about this story. And
No, they're not. We literally just saw a CNN article about it.
one of the saddest things that I read pertaining to this story was from the cousin of the boy's mother, who said, he will never be forgotten. And I believe that she believes that. I truly do. But the reality is that Canon will be forgotten soon. I mean, some of us might make a point to...
Okay? I don't think she's talking about the general public, John. Most murder victims, unfortunately, get forgotten by the general public. What's your point?
remember him, but the reality is that 2 weeks from now, no one's going to be talking about this story. But 2 weeks from now...
Okay, it'll probably come up again during the trial, but what do you want them to talk about? Like, there's no greater message to learn here, John. When we're talking about, for instance, and I'm sure you're going to equivocate in a little bit, when we're talking about, like, the Chauvin incident where he killed a perp, that's something that relates to other things happening. We see this time and time again, police killing suspects, especially black suspects. So it's emblematic of a greater issue. The murder of this poor kid by the neighbor, it doesn't seem like there's any rhyme or reason. The neighbor's just fucking cuckoo bananas and decided to execute a kid on his lawn. Like, what's the greater lesson we should learn from that, John? There isn't one, unless you think that it has to do with the color of his skin, which it doesn't. So, why would we continue to cover it until such a time as new things happen? The guy's been arrested, great. I'm sure he'll go on trial and be found guilty, and those are good things. But until that time, what do you want the news to do? You want him to just be like, by the way, this kid's still dead. That's not informative or teaching anyone anything. It just seemed like this dude is nuts, right? Epiphany Jane, thanks for the 100 bits. I appreciate that. And Sky King 5051808 subscribing, thank you, says he's trying to whip his Nazis into a frenzy by pushing an us versus them narrative. Oh, I understand what he's doing. But, like, it's so obvious what he's doing because it doesn't make sense in any other context. This only makes sense in a context where he's saying, see, look, this black guy killed a white kid. Okay, what's anyone supposed to get out of that? It's a tragedy, but it has no larger implications for the people, like, not involved, right? This isn't some systematic issue.
2 months from now, we will all still be talking about George Floyd. St. Floyd of Minneapolis. 2 decades from now, our children...
Yes, because again, he's emblematic of a system that is broken. That's the point, right? Rosa Parks wasn't the first person to not want to give up her seat, or the first person to be told to get to the back of the bus. But it's remembered because it sparked a lot of outrage, the Montgomery bus boycotts, and helped light the flames of the civil rights movement, right? We don't remember things because they're just a thing that happened. We remember them because the result of those actions causes more things to happen. So George Floyd was killed by the police, and after that, it sparked outrage, causing mass protests. So that's why people will remember him. Pretty simple. Thank you to The Pseudosapien for hosting. Welcome.
Children will have to memorize that name for American history exams. And we know why that is, but to the average person that might seem a bit strange, but they probably won't question it. Because
John, if they remember George Floyd's name and it is something that's brought up in history books, good. That would mean it led to actual lasting change in our policing systems. I'm sorry you don't like black people being in history books. It's very clear you don't. But maybe get the fuck over yourself. That'd be good.
Because people are not actually individuals. That's my favorite shitlib assumption. We all know some liberal whose entire personality is just, excuse me, are you registered to vote? Are you registered? Oh, if only more people voted. If only more people, then everything would be fine. The problem isn't more democracy, it's less democracy. We really need all the people who haven't been interested or intelligent enough to take 2 minutes to register to vote. We really need them calling the shots.
Is he unironically calling for fewer people to vote here? Really? Very democratic of you, John. Don't you just love this country in such a way that you apparently want fewer of its citizens to have a say in its governance? What a lovely opinion to have about the American populace. I'm not going to pretend I have the greatest opinion of the American voter base. But at the end of the day, everyone has the right to vote, and I think they should exercise that right. And be allowed to do so easily. Look at what Trump's doing to, like, again, the Postal Service right now in an election year in which mail-in voting is going to be more important than ever because of the global pandemic. Like, John, I get that people on the right don't like that a lot of people have the right to vote, but maybe put the mask on a little bit more because it just makes you look like a fucking fascist.
Most people do not think about things. Most people do not have agency. They do not possess the internal monologue.
This is legit unironic. Like, everyone else is an NPC. Like, what the fuck is this solipsistic worldview that you think some people are just out here that are lesser human beings than you and therefore they shouldn't have a say in governance? This is literally fascist ideology that you're like, I'm above the plebs. Me, John Doyle, sitting in my parents' house. I clearly, ex-Subway employee, am in the top 1% of thinkers in the United States, and therefore everyone should bow to how I believe the government should run. John, I think women shouldn't have the right to vote. Doyle thinks that his opinion matters more than everyone else in the population, and it's fucking sick.
Basically respond to stimuli and group conformity and then default to pursuing food, sex, and leisure. And the reason I bring this up is because the fact that there is not national outrage about this in isolation, let's not even compare it to George Floyd for a second. The fact that this in itself is not getting people demanding.
It was trending on Twitter. People were fucked up about it. It's a fucked up situation. It's fucked. We can all look at that situation and go, that's fucked up. Fuck that guy. But he's already been arrested and charged. There's nothing else to be done about it. Now the justice system will hopefully carry out justice appropriately. Like, there's nothing to protest here, John. He was arrested and charged. So, yep, it's a crime that happened. It's really fucked up. It's sad, and we can all feel for the family and for the poor child that died. But there's no societal impact, right? It doesn't mean anything to the larger picture other than, wow, really fucked up things happen sometimes because some really fucked up people do fucked up things. But everyone already knows that, right? Random crimes happen all the time. So I don't understand what you want people to do. Do you want people to start a fucking race riot and start hating black people just because this guy's black? Because that's the only thing I could think you would mean by this. Like, what do you want people to be? Like, oh, we need to go and march and protest because people shouldn't shoot children in the face. Like, yeah, everyone knows that. That's why this is such an interesting story, because this guy's such a piece of shit. But what do you want people to do, right? In the George Floyd situation, in the situation we have now with Black Lives Matter and people standing up for making the cops accountable for the crimes and murders they commit, that's actionable. That's something that you can say to the establishment and say, here are the things that I want changed in the system. We want cops held accountable. We want better training. We want de-escalation training. We want to make sure that cops have body cameras on all the time. We want to make sure that they know that when they have a perp in their custody that they have a responsibility to keep that person safe, even if they're a dirtbag, because at the end of the day, they're the cops. They're not judges. They're not judge, jury, and executioner. It's their job to hold a suspect safely until such a time as the justice system can carry out what it needs to do. These are actionable things. In this case, what do you want anyone to do, John? What is your purpose here?
Media coverage for this story, it vindicates so much about what we talk about. Like, if a 5-year-old white boy can be executed in his front lawn in front of his sisters, and the media won't cover it because the murderer was a black man, and
you're assuming it's because he's a black dude. That has nothing to do with it. A, it has been covered. I just showed you the CNN article and video from the network. And B, what the fuck else do you want him to talk about it? C, you're claiming that it's because he's black, with no evidence. Brilliant.
and as a result, no one in this country cares, how do you ever expect to gain any ground? I mean, we have no cultural power in this country, but conservatives think that we're winning because, oh, Trump's in office, and the other day he totally owned this stupid liberal reporter. Cry more, leftist. Hold on, let me drink some leftist tears. Would you like to know what that is? That is a cope of astronomical proportions. They are so overwhelmingly in charge of the narratives in this country, and as a result, what everyone thinks in this country, that a case like this is completely ignored, specifically because it was a black man murdering a young white boy.
No, you have no evidence for that, John. Murders happen every day. Let's just look. I don't know. Child murdered. News. A lot of these are going to be this kid again because this is the most recent one. But here we go. Here's another kid. 3 men charged with murder and shooting death of 7-year-old Zamar Jones.
Remember having that feeling for the first time? The first day.
Gee, I wonder why John didn't make a video about this kid. It's because he's black. Here's another one where some kid was killed.
Developing tonight,
but of course, John doesn't care about that one because the kid isn't white. Here's another kid who was found dead recently. Like,
Don't wait.
as shitty as it is, kids get killed all the time. This was only 3 weeks ago, and that's like the most. So in the last month, like 4 or 5 kids have wound up dead. Oh, Sky King 051808, thanks for gifting 5 tier 1 subs. I appreciate that. Thanks for supporting the channel. My point is, kids get murdered all the time. It's interesting to me that John picked this specific murder. It's almost like he only cares because it was a black guy killing a white kid. He doesn't seem to care when the opposite happens, or even if it's just, like, a non-white kid getting killed. Like, you had weeks of other kids getting killed that you could have covered, but you picked this one specifically because it fit your weird racist, like, fasci agenda where you're like, look, this is a black guy killing a white kid, okay, and their races have nothing to do with the murder, John.
Child. And so when the silent majority disappears, as our old...
The silent majority. I am so sick of people on the right claiming they're a silent majority. No, you're a very loud, overrepresented minority. Stop it.
Older generations leave us, and the generations replacing them are being indoctrinated by these narratives from infancy throughout their lives, and they're now the majority of the electorate. What then?
We're already the majority of the electorate, John. It's just that, unfortunately, due to both gerrymandering and the Electoral College, hicks in the middle of nowhere with racist opinions, their votes are weighted more than normal people from reasonable areas. Thanks, Electoral College. Fucking up the country since 1776.
It's over then. We will have the ultimate illusion of choice. You know, sure, we're all going to get to cast our vote because everyone's voice counts, and we all get to pick where we get our information from because it's a citizen's duty to be informed, but it won't matter. It will be a one-party state. You will have the Democratic Socialist.
No, ideally you will have, again, I think we should do reforms so we have like something like 5 parties that more so reflects what other countries have. That'd be great because this whole idea of having basically 2 options in an election is stupid. So ranked choice voting, basically anything other than first past the post would be great. But even if we stick with what we have now, which is effectively a 2-party system, there would probably be a period of time in which what we call the Democrats today would be the dominant party for quite a while. This has happened in United States history when there's sort of been a change in social or economic views of people in the electorate, right? So for a while you might have dominance from the Democrats, but then at some point, most likely due to changing opinions, you would have a further left party, and then the Democrats would be the right party, and you'd have like an actual like labor movement party, more or less.
And you will have the liberal Republicans who will appear to be right-wing by comparison. The point is that winning elections isn't enough. We have to actually take control of the culture. It is the only way. Otherwise, our window to win elections is only going to be open for about 10 more years. If a story is unbelievably evil and shocking as this...
What the fuck? John, we just did it. Look, you fucking liar. Let's see. We got Yahoo, Washington Post. Hold on. Control V. Look at all the news articles. We looked at these earlier. You fucking liar, John. So dishonest.
Can't get covered.
Just because NBC, ABC, New York Times didn't cover it doesn't mean it wasn't covered. It's not a national news story, John. It's sad. It's fucked up. But again, like we searched earlier, multiple kids have gone missing or murdered in the last month. It's not national news because it happens shockingly often. In the area that it happened, regionally, there's tons of coverage. Of course there is. But it's not national news.
Because to do so would jeopardize the narrative. You can forget just begging for diversity of thought because they don't care. And they probably would have cared at least a little bit if the murderer were a white guy. Like, hey.
Let's actually search Yahoo News because I think it would come up on Yahoo. Control V. Search news. Oh, look at that. There's fucking 3 results. It's almost like you're a big fat liar, John. Jesus Christ.
Hey, look at this. Look, this was really sad. And then people would be like, wow, white people are the worst. What else is new? But to even acknowledge that black people do things like this, just like white people, and actually even...
Dude, no one is saying that people of every race don't commit crimes. Or do commit crimes. No one is saying that everyone is Sorry, let me reword. No one is saying that specific racial groups do not commit crimes. Because that's not the conversation we're having, John. We recognize that basically everyone in society is capable of committing crimes. But the conversation that's going on in society now, the predominant narrative that's being told and being talked about, is the fact that police officers, and that's an occupation, not a race. You could be a black police officer and still do fucked up shit. Police officers, with their supreme powers and their immunity from being charged for committing crimes on duty, that's wrong, and that's something that needs to be addressed, right? And the statistics bear out the fact that black people are more often than white people by rate victims of this mentality that cops can get away and do it with whatever they want, with the perps, okay?
More than white people would undermine the narrative that black people are the eternal victims in society at the hands of white people who are the eternal oppressors.
John, slavery only ended like 150 years ago, something like that. And up until 1969, segregation was still like the law of the land in many places, and black people were getting pushed out of their right to vote with awful like tests that were rigged against them and stuff. My parents are older than the Civil Rights Act. This is not some ancient history that you're talking about. Why do you talk about this like systematic racism isn't something that has affected multiple communities, though severely the black community in the United States? It's the truth. And you know that. And I know you know that. And I know you know that I know you know that. Right? So stop with all this mask on bullshit. Just say what you mean and mean what you say, you fucking coward.
That's what this is about. This is about preserving the Black Lives Matter narrative. This is about keeping the spotlight and national conversation on George Floyd.
Yes, because that's what's important right now, because that's something that hasn't been addressed after decades and decades of black people saying, like, hey, we're being treated badly by the police. And now, with the fact that everyone has cameras all the time, constantly we're catching cops brutalizing people. There's entire spreadsheets just from the past, like, 3 or 4 months. I linked to one a couple streams back that was like, there were like 1,000 entries just from the beginning of the protests of cops using inordinate force on protesters or people just hanging out. Like, it's fucked up. It's something that needs to be addressed. But you don't seem to think it matters, because it's clear you don't care what happens to black people as a community. And that's your right to have whatever shitty opinion you want to have, but it makes you a coward to not just outright say it and to try and use all these weasel words and dog whistles to try and get around it because you know people will call you out for the racist you fucking are when you admit what you really believe. Go back to working at Subway, John. I want my sub toasted, you fucking bitch.
But let's compare these cases. I think it's fair to say that things can be tragic and things can be more tragic than other things, and particularly with deaths. I think a lot of that is weighted on who the person is, what their character was like, and also the circumstances surrounding their death. And so with George Floyd, we're told by the supposedly reasonable people that, you know, even if he's not the angel that he's being purported to be, the circumstances of the death are still tragic. It's like, okay. Were they more tragic than being executed at point-blank range?
Are you really going to play the game of, actually, this kid was murdered and that's worse because he's a child? First of all, I'm not playing that fucking game. We're not going to pull out a fucking ruler and try and measure the tragedy of different people's deaths, because it's pointless and means nothing. Secondly, again, the kid was murdered. That's fucked up. It is, but the guy was already charged, right? The justice system worked in that case and probably will continue to work through his trial and sentencing. But what we see in the case of George Floyd is, again, Chauvin and the other officers who sat and watched while he murdered George Floyd were walking away scot-free until the public got involved. That's the difference. And again, you know that. I know you know that. I know you know I know that. So stop it with all this dishonest bullshit. Oh, let me just equivocate real quick between these two things and act like they're even remotely the same thing. They're not. They're not, John. So knock it off.
In front of your sisters at 5 years old? No, they weren't. But what about the people? Okay, well, one was a perfectly happy, wonderful 5-year-old boy who probably would avoid stepping on a ladybug if it were in his path. And the other was a middle-aged, degenerate, drug-addicted criminal.
Oh, God.
It's coming in the mail. It says
What
it's
the
running
hell?
late, so
Hold on.
I'm supposed to get it today, but I might get it.
First of all, calling someone degenerate, big Nazi energy. Secondly, I don't care what George Floyd did. The police do not have the right to execute people in their custody. What do you people not understand about that? This isn't fucking Judge Dredd walking around being like, you have committed a crime, sentence death, and immediately kills them. No. If a cop kills someone in their custody, that's murder. I don't care if it's the goddamn Zodiac killer in the custody of the police. If the police kill them extrajudicially, that's murder, and that's fucking wrong.
Criminal who robbed pregnant women at gunpoint and elected to point the weapon at their in utero child, and who also starred in amateur pornography. Now,
okay, are we really saying that someone who stars in pornography deserves death now? Really? That's your line, John? Oh, you were in a porn once, so it's okay if the police murder you extrajudicially. Fuck you!
judging by the national outrage, judging by the cities that were burned, you would think that George Floyd's death was more...
God damn, they keep going to the same things. It's always the picture of the Amazon warehouse, you notice that? It's almost like not very many things burned at all, and they have to keep going back to the same images to try and make a point, because they're intellectually dishonest about what's actually going on with the protest, which have mostly been peaceful.
More tragic, but after breaking it down, I think it's safe to say that Canon Hinen's death is more of a tragedy than George Floyd's death. Canon Hinent is more of a tragedy than George Floyd. Canon Hinent is more of a tragedy than George Floyd.
But is it emblematic of decades of systematic racist abuse of an entire group of people? No. And also, again, calling any one murder more tragic than another, Really stupid. None of this is objective. Stop trying to do this. Stop trying to concern troll. Again, I looked at a list of murders of children in the last month. You specifically picked a white kid. We know what you're doing, John.
Send me an email if you want to see my math. They painted murals and leveled
Your fucking math, really? I'd love to see your morality math. Cause boy, if you somehow cracked the code on morality via math, please step up and win your Nobel Prize. You'll win $1 million. You won't have to work at Subway anymore. You can move out of your parents' house and stop being racist in it. You think his parents ever knock on the door and say, "Hey, John, could you stop being such a racist prick inside my house?" And he goes, "Mom, I'm filming my show."
cities for George Floyd, gave his family 15...
Again, John, you know this isn't just about George Floyd. It's about the fact that the police have gotten away with systematic injustice for decades, both against black and white people, though, of course, it affects black people more. Police are out of fucking control, and they need to be put in place, period. They need to be trained better. They need to be evaluated better before they're allowed on the force. They need to have oversight that they are currently lacking in a severe way.
million
Cops should not be allowed to investigate other cops. Period.
dollars, and they can't even give Canon Hinnant a 500-word eulogy? Oh, he's gonna cut you down. He's gonna cut you down. These people are evil. They don't view human life as universally valuable. They don't even view children.
You literally just said earlier in this video that you don't want certain people to vote. So what the fuck are you talking about? At least be internally consistent in your shitty dog whistle video, you fucking moron.
That way. Look at their attitudes towards abortion or even infanticide with the more honest ones. The way that they regard life is of conditional value, and maybe with abortion they'll employ arbitrary metrics like sentience or valuability, but it just...
Those aren't arbitrary. Sentience is an arbitrary guideline, really? You think that sentience in regard to whether or not you should be allowed to take something or someone's life is arbitrary? John, I assume you fucking like steak, right? The reasons that a lot of people say that it's okay to eat animals, and I eat animals, I think that's morally questionable, but I do it, is because that they aren't, like, on the same level as humans mentally, right? So clearly the same argument would apply to, like, embryos or fetuses. Or, I guess you're just a hypocrite, right? Seems like that one.
Just so happens that in this particular case, the conditions that have to be met are whether that person is useful to the narrative. And this 5-year-old boy wasn't, so who cares about him? And his death actually even harms the narrative because it suggests that black people aren't just always the victims, and that sometimes they actually do pretty evil things. And so...
Again, complete straw man argument. John, no one is saying that people who aren't white can't or don't commit crime. That's not what the discussion in this country is about. It's not about saying that black people are never committing crimes. It's about the fact that on the whole, they are being brutalized and killed by the police at an inordinate rate. Period.
This story had to be completely swept under the rug. This was not...
It hasn't been. Again, you want to look at child murders again? Child murders. News. Here's a child murder. Here's the one you're talking about. That's about killing a dad. Where's the next one? Probably murder would be better for news because it's specifically going to talk about specific murders. North Carolina. There's that one. There's this dude. This is the most recent one. Child abuse case from 2015. Capital murder charge. So this guy probably killed a kid. We have this kid dead. This woman in Waco killed this kid. This was a day ago. Yikerinos. So this lady killed someone. This kid's dead. Family says online spat led to murder of 28-year-old mother. Well, that's the mother dead. That's not the kid dead. You're going to have a really messed up looking search history. True. Child killed by father during murder-suicide. This kid's dead. This person murdered someone.
Turning now to an update on the tragic
This kid's dead. This lady murdered a kid. I don't see a picture of the kid, but the kid's dead. Woman charged with murder in death of child. There's another child murderer. Again, John, this kid's dead. The reason we don't cover these things at a national level usually is because they happen all the time, right? And it's sad, I agree. It's fucked up. It's real fucked up. But there's no systematic issue that's causing child murder. There's just people who do fucked up things for a variety of reasons, whether it's like Casey Anthony not wanting a daughter and wanting to like go back to life before that, or whether it's someone who's just like angry and crazy, you know? This kid died. Like, this shit happens, and it's a tragedy, as much as anything is a tragedy. But it has nothing to do with the fact that the reason that Black Lives Matter and people who support Black Lives Matter are protesting isn't specifically because of George Floyd. It's because of what George Floyd represented as far as the policing system in this country not caring about taking care of perps who are of a dark skin color. It's very simple.
Not a coincidence. These people communicate. They have editorial meetings, and they have official decisions to blacklist categorically stories like this because reporting on them.
His funeral is trending right now. Let's take a look. Twitter. Nope. Twitch. Twitter. Trending. You sure it isn't just in your personal trending? Because I don't see him. There we go. Here it is. Funeral held for 5-year-old Canon Hinant, who was fatally shot while riding his bike. It's literally trending on Twitter.
Truth to the American people would undermine their...
It's on CNN.com. Yeah, we looked at the CNN article earlier.
...manufactured narrative. So... when they say Black Lives Matter, they don't just mean that Black Lives Matter.
Nope, that's what that means.
Like, of course Black Lives Matter. No one disputes that.
The police do, because they kill black people inordinately relative to the size of black population within this country. You clearly dispute that, John, because that's all Black Lives Matter is saying, is Black Lives Matter. We want to be treated the same as everyone else. So don't be like, no one is disputing that. Yeah, they are. That's the problem.
What they really mean is that Black Lives Matter because they are black. White lives don't matter simply because they are white.
No. No one's saying that, Johnny.
And unless they can be used to propel the narrative, they don't matter at all. That's the message. That's the most tragic thing about this whole... What they really mean is that they don't just mean that Black Lives Matter. Like, of course Black Lives Matter. No one disputes that.
Do-do-do-do. Report. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. Boop. 6 minutes, 22 seconds. A report. Hey, completely unrelated reason. If you want to check out this video for literally any reason, there's a link in the chat. You're welcome.
What they really mean is that Black Lives Matter because they are black. White lives don't matter simply because they are white, and unless they can be used to propel the narrative, they don't matter at all. That's the message. That's the most tragic thing about this whole thing, that Canon Hinant doesn't get to be remembered. He won't get a mural because he is white and because his death is inconvenient to the current narratives.
No. It's because kids get killed all the time, John. Kids get killed all the time, and it's not part of some larger systematic issue at play, right? And someone might do a mural of this kid in the city he's from. I don't know. But murals aren't the way that we judge whether or not something is, like, socially important. The reason people talk about George Floyd's death and the reason it sparked so many protests is, again, because it's emblematic of a systematic issue. The murder of this poor kid isn't.
And I've been very careful here because, you know, I don't want people to take what I'm saying in a negative or a hateful way because it's not intended to be that way.
It is, though. It is. Stop being a weasel. Say what you mean and mean what you say, you fucking coward.
But I have to ask, how is your day going to change today because of this? Like, how much longer are we going to read about things like this and just go, that's a shame, and then do nothing about it?
What do you want done about it, John? You can't preemptively, like, precog, like it's Minority Report and be like, yes, we must track down all the child murderers. Literally, what you're saying only makes sense if you're saying, well, the murderer in this case was black, so we should just assume all black people are murderers. What the fuck do you want people to do, John? Say what you mean, or don't say anything at all.
Like, where's our outrage? Why don't we flood the streets surrounding the headquarters of these propagandists and demand that they submit to our narrative, which used to go by simply
Slowdog52 with 100 bits. Maybe we should reduce the number of guns in circulation and increase background checks, John. Yeah.
the truth. But I'm not advocating for anything like that. I would never encourage unlicensed demonstrations because not only...
Unlicensed demonstrations? Oh no, can't be using your First Amendment rights.
Could that get me kicked off YouTube? It's just plain wrong. You know, if this were Black Lives Matter, they'd probably walk into the offices of the places suppressing this story and wreak havoc. But again, we're not them. We don't want to be like them. We don't want to be off-putting. We don't want to be destructive. We don't want to be effective. So don't do that. It's all a joke. I disavow that. But
saying you disavow something while clearly saying that you want someone to do something implicitly, again, with the weasel words. John, be fucking honest. Stop this. It's so ridiculous. Like, being a coward fascist who hides their actual motives and beliefs doesn't make you some, like, ooh, I'm an undercover secret fighter for the resistance. I just want to establish a fascist government in which me, the smart person, is at the top, and people like me will tell all these plebs what to do. No, you're just a fucking coward, and you know that people are going to call you out on your nonsense because you don't really believe in the free marketplace of ideas. You believe in being a coward and inching closer towards fascism, while secretly in your head you go, they can't even tell what I'm really saying. No, we see it, John. You're not some clever fucker who's like, there's a reason you're living in your parents' house, John, right? It's because you're just a Subway employee with a shitty YouTube show. Stop with these delusions of grandeur.
what you can do is you can donate to the family. There were a few fake GoFundMe set up initially, but this is the one that's real, as confirmed by all the local news outlets covering the story. So as of right now, it's raised about $132,000 for the family, and of course, money will never replace the child, but what it will...
And hey, let's see if we can... Does he link to it in here? If you would like to donate to this poor family, because I'm sure they could use it, here's a link in the chat. Because honestly, that is some fucked up shit that happened to them. My sympathy goes out to that family, because no one deserves to have their kid fucking ripped away from them by some psycho with a gun, right?
Will do, even ignoring that money is always helpful for a family with children to feed, is that it will show them that there are people out there who are there for them. And if George Floyd's family can get $15 million, then they should be able to...
Can I help promote your brand new subreddit, Humanize Me? Created 3 days ago, focuses on dignifying sex workers. Do you have a link? I'll put it in the chat.
Get some money as well, which will hopefully make this time a little bit easier for them. So please go donate to them. I donated $2,500 earlier today, and I don't say that to be like, oh, look at me, look how virtuous I am. But I say that because you all know I don't make a lot of money doing YouTube. YouTube kind of doesn't like me, but it's still important.
Because you're a shit.
That we prioritize what we're spending our money on. And I know that times are hard right now with the shutdown, so if you can't afford it, obviously, you should prioritize the necessities of your family and yourself. But
yeah, he did work at Subway. I didn't say it for fun. He brought a gun to Subway, his place of employment. I don't know if this is still where he works. He says he didn't make a lot of money on YouTube. So, I don't know.
But please, if you can, donate to his family. I'll put the link in the description and in the comments so you can, donate. But this is a perfect example of an American family who is in need, and they're going through an extraordinarily hard time right now, something that hopefully none of us will ever have to experience. But, if we're not willing to help them out, if we're not willing to take that action, then what's the point of even trying to fix the country? Hey, guys.
And, of course, the title of this is Media Ignores White Child Murdered by Black Man. That's not inflammatory at all. Again, if you want a link to this video for any reason, not saying you should report it, I disavow, but... There's a fucking link. Well, John disavowed, and clearly he's not. So I say I disavow, right? So that's how that works. Seriously though, go report the video. Fuck.